Welcome back, everybody. This is lesson 4 of developing a dynamic website from start to finish. In this lesson we're going to work on setting up the file structure as well as working with some basic HTML and CSS to get that rolling, and we're even going to touch on working on a color scheme and some tools to make that easier on you. So I'm going to walk you through the basic file structure that we're going to use. Now, this is not the file structure that you have to use. You could really do whatever you want. This is just how I do it, and I'm going to teach you guys how I do it. And then the beauty of programming and development and things like that is that you can take what I've done. Now I organize my things, and you can create your own method off of that. But it only makes sense to use the, or for me to teach the method I use. So we're going to kind of go through each folder one by one and the files that are in the folder. And before we get into this, I want to note the reason we're starting with the file structure. One, that's probably the way you should always start, but of the components of this series that we're going to build into this site, the template system is the first that we're going to work on, and we're going to need some of these basic elements in here. Now, we're only going to handle a couple of folders right now. Our file structure is going to get larger as things progress. So right now, as it says, this is the basic requirements, and when I say requirements, I mean that as far as the method I'm going to teach you. So we start out, we have a config folder, and this is going to hold, it's kind of self-explanatory, configuration files. One example would be our connection to the database, items like that. Next we have our CSS folder. This will hold all of our CSS style sheets. Some people prefer to make one giant CSS document. Some prefer to cut it up into several different files to better organize it. That's the way I prefer to do it, and that's the way I'm going to teach you how to do it. Some people will call this folder styles or style sheets. I just prefer CSS. It's short and sweet and makes sense. Then we also have an images folder, which is actually going to be empty at this point. We just might as well put it there because we will no doubt have some images to put in here. So now what we're going to do is kind of take a look at the initial files we're going to put in these folders. Off the root, there's going to be the index.php, and if you're following over from the first Build a Website series, you'll know that index.php or .html, etc. That will be the page that will load when somebody goes to your domain name or wherever your website is. In the config folder, we're going to put a file called setup.php, and I'll get more into what's going to go in here later. This will hold kind of the basic initialization of our site. It'll hold session information, where functions are located. It'll initialize certain things. I don't know. It's just it is what it is. It's the setup folder or file, and that's just where we're going to start from. Next is the CSS folder, and we're going to create a file called styles.css. Now, I mentioned that I prefer to have several style sheets to better organize things, and we're going to start with one, and then we're going to start kind of organizing it from there later on in other videos. And that is pretty much the gist of what we need to do. I'm hoping you're following us over from the first series, because we're going to go into Dreamweaver, and we're going to start setting up these files within Dreamweaver, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time going over some of the basics of Dreamweaver that we talked about in the first series. And before we go into Dreamweaver, I want to take a look at our UX document that we made in the previous video. We're going to refer back to this a couple of times today, and I just wanted to bring it up again. If you guys went ahead and made a Google document like I did, then you'd want to pull that up. If you just doodled it out on paper or on a marker board and still have it handy, refer to that. If you didn't, I would definitely recommend that you do make some sort of plan, some sort of, even if it's just a doodle, some sort of idea of how your site's going to look. Ultimately, I prefer everybody follows along with me, and then once we're done with the series, you can take what I give you and turn it into your own. That's part of the reason why we're taking such a basic approach to this, and why I parted ways with the original series. There's nothing wrong with the original series, but it was very design heavy, and in this series I want to stay far away from design as far as images and things like that. We're going to try and design as much with just CSS and simple, minimal look and feel. That way you guys can take this and take the programming and the coding knowledge and then apply the design to it yourself. I just think it's going to be a much easier and cleaner way to do it. So if we open up Dreamweaver, I happen to be using Dreamweaver 5.5, I believe. Dreamweaver CS6 is out. I haven't picked up a copy of that yet, so if things look a little different and you're using it because you're using the new version or you're using an old version, try to follow along. But again, if you haven't watched the first series, building a website from start to finish, I recommend that you do. That way you kind of know what you're doing in Dreamweaver already. Very quickly, I'll just show that I set up a site called TDC, full site, dynamic, whatever, and open up the settings for that. I've got my server here at this domain name, which is where we're going to start keeping most of our series, or at least the documents of it, so that they're available to everybody. So I've got a folder on my computer, it's empty, and we're going to fill it with these this folder structure and file structure that we just talked about. So the first thing we want to add is a new folder, and we're going to call it config. And I did that by right-clicking on the very top here and choosing new folder. It's important because once you've created this first folder, it's going to probably be selected. It's important that you go up here again and right-click and say new folder. Otherwise, you're going to create a folder within config. So we'll say CSS. Now I say that, and I say it's important. It's not something you can't easily remedy, and we'll show that here. Say I forget to do that, and I say new folder, images, and whoops, I've got that inside my CSS folder. We can easily drag this up to the root folder, and there you go. So now we're resembling our initial folder structure. Now let's make the files. And as we noted, the first file to make is the index.php. And this is going to be our main file. There's a good chance that we might not actually have any other we'll call it physical page other than index.php. This is one thing you'll learn about dynamic development. You don't have to have a home page or an index.php and a contactus.php and an aboutus.php. It doesn't need to work that way, and that's part of the beauty of building a template system, and we're going to get into that here. So we're going to go back over to Dreamweaver. We're going to create a new file, Control N. We want to make sure it's PHP, layout is none, and this part here is very important. I want to make sure that the document type is HTML5. This is going to matter later on when we start working in JavaScript and things like that. Let's go ahead and say create, and it's going to create just a basic document with all the standard HTML items. Let's go ahead and save, which is Control S, and we're already in our root, so we'll go ahead and call it index, hit enter, and now this is our index file. Sorry, I just wanted to reorganize this a little bit. Alright, so we have our index file. Let's go ahead and first title our site. This is a big no-no. I probably mentioned this in the first series. One obvious amateur mistake of a web designer or web developer would be letting a site be public without changing the title and leaving it as untitled document. That's a very noticeable rookie mistake. So let's go ahead and change that right now, and we're going to call this, we'll make our business, and this could be whatever you want it, but we'll just call this Dynamic Site LLC, and that's the name, or how about sites? That'll be the name of our company website. So we go ahead and save this. Alright, so now what we need to do, start remembering these shortcuts again. We need to upload this to the server. If you're working on your local machine, you need to make sure that you created these folders within the document root of your server, meaning you set up Apache, and wherever your server is set up, this is where you're putting your files. Otherwise, the PHP files won't run. So I recommend you either do that, or the easier way to do it would be to take advantage of our free hosting while you're going through this. So go ahead and Control-Shift-U, which will upload. And there we go. I've already pulled up. This is the URL up here to view the progress of this site live, and we bought a domain name called 2d.org. It's not necessarily a name that makes any sense. I just figured I can throw a subdomain S on it and make it look like study.org. Clever, confusing, crafty, who knows. But that's where we're going to start storing stuff. So dynamic.series.s.2d.org, that's where this is at. And now if I hit refresh, we should see an empty page, because I've now uploaded the index page, and sure enough, and our title is right here. So this should all be basic, and you know, just a refresh if you watched our original series. So the next thing we want to do is we need to create the next file, which is our setup file. So in Dreamweaver, let's go ahead and say Control-N, sorry, new PHP, and this is something you're going to have to get in the habit of. We're going to create a PHP file, and we're going to go ahead and just take everything out of it. These PHP files are going to be included in our document, and that'll make more sense here in a little bit when I talk about the include function. So we do not need to have all the HTML, head, body, tags, all that, because they're already there. We're going to be taking what's in this document here and placing it inside of index, where those tags already exist. Hopefully that makes sense, and if it doesn't, it should make sense a little bit down the road. for good measure, let's just go ahead and we'll make some PHP tags, which is done like this. You start a PHP block by doing that, and you end it like that. There are some short codes for this, but we're going to teach this way. We're going to go ahead and come up with kind of a labeling system. It's going to be simple, nothing fancy. Two pound signs or number signs tells the browser that you're making a comment line. Thus the same for 2 slashes. Or if you want to do a multi-comment line, you would do slash, asterisk, and then asterisk slash to close it, and anything in between is a comment. For this right now, we're going to simply just say, call this the setup document, and leave it at that. And we're not going to do anything in here. Give ourselves just a little bit of space. We're going to save this. Make sure we go to our config folder and call this setup. So we have that file set up, and next we need to create our style sheet. So back to Dreamweaver, Control N for a new file, click on CSS, say create, and we'll just go ahead and save this for good measure. Make sure you go back a directory and go into your CSS folder, and we'll just call this styles. And we're going to leave this blank for just a moment and save it. Alright, now we're going to talk a little bit about PHP, and this is where I've had to make some decisions on how I'm going to run this series. I have an Intro to PHP series that I did a while back, and it teaches you just the basics of PHP. I strongly recommend that you watch that at this point if you haven't already. Take a break from this series and go watch that and come right back, because I'm not going to go over all of the basics of PHP since they're already mentioned in that series. So I'll try and I'll go into detail about a lot of PHP in this series when I find things that we haven't already talked about, or just the basic elements that everybody should know, and really it's just the basic elements of programming in general, things like variables and functions. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go up here to line 1. We're going to hit enter a couple of times to give ourselves some space. We're going to create another PHP block, and I will remind you that PHP blocks can be anywhere on a page, and you can have as many as you want, but just remember you can only write PHP within a PHP block. So started out with the opening tag there and the closing tag. So here at the top, let's go ahead and make a comment. And this is just stating that we're loading the setup document here, which will be obvious, but I'm just trying to get you guys in the habit of commenting your code, at least at a basic level, because that is a very important, tedious but very important part of development programming in general, is commenting, also known as documenting your code. So what I'm going to teach you now is a predefined function called include, and there's a couple different versions of include. There's include once, is another one. We're just going to use include throughout the site for now, just to alleviate any confusion. The really main difference between the two is that include once will force the page to recognize that you can only include this file once. If you try to include it again later on down the page, which you could, there could be a reason to do so in certain circumstances, it will not allow it. But we already know that we're not going to include this setup file more than once, so just to keep things simple, we're going to go ahead and we type include, and Dreamweaver will automatically turn that green, telling you that this is a function, a predefined function. And what I mean by that is it's a function that PHP already has defined. From our intro to PHP, you'll have learned that there are predefined functions and functions you can create yourself. This is a predefined function, and proper syntax for a function would be to add the parentheses and then end the line or the statement with a semicolon. Now it's giving us an error because we're missing something. We're missing the part that's most important, the actual document. And we need to put this within quotes because it's a string, and we're going to go ahead and use single quotes. And all we need to do is direct it to where the file is. It's in config, and say /setup.php. And now our error went away. Let's go ahead and save it. Now it's important to note what this does is it's going to take every single thing that is in setup.php and basically, for lack of better words, plop it right there on line 3. So it's really no different than us typing the contents of setup.php within the index.php. A lot of what we're doing has to do with keeping a document clean and easy to read, and just overall organization. So we save that, and this version of Dreamweaver and above has that nice feature of being able to see documents that are linked or associated with it, and now you see setup here and you can click over and easily look at it. Another great tool, at least I know in this version of Dreamweaver, is the split code view, which will allow you to view associated files on the right. Sometimes it's on the left, depending on how you have Dreamweaver set up. But it allows you to kind of edit over here and see your main file over here too. It's really nice. So we're going to keep this view open. And again, I went to view, so again I went to view, split code, and then I made sure that I clicked on setup.php right here. It's important to note, not the setup.php tab up here, but this little one right here with the round around, kind of shade around it that shows that it's included. You can always go back to the source code or setup. So next we have our style sheet, which that needs to go within the head. So I'm going to go ahead and give ourselves a couple of lines here between the title and the closing head tag. I'm pretty sure I mentioned in the first series that this is one of the only times that you'll see me utilize a drag and drop feature of Dreamweaver, meaning 99.9% of everything I do is hand-coded. This, for some reason, to me just seems like a waste of time to type out because it's so easy. I can easily come over here to styles.css and drop it right in here, and it automatically writes out the code, and that's that. Or you can remember how to type this out quite honestly. That's what I keep forgetting, and it's probably because I keep using that drag and drop. So, but really, that's up to you. But we save, and this is no different than including. It's about the same thing. We're dropping a style sheet right here, and now you can see that it's included in here, and you can open it up over here, which is cool. We can edit the style sheet while looking at the main website. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at our UX document here, and I'm going to try and do this quick so this video doesn't drag on too long. But we're going to go ahead and quickly make almost a clone of this. It's going to be kind of a wireframe in HTML. You'll see what I mean here in a second, but it's just to really get the document prepared. And by document, I mean the index.php. So if we look at this here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 elements. And we're basically going to make a div for these 3. And for the logo, I was going to open up Photoshop and have us make a logo. We're going to do that later. For the logo, we're just going to go ahead and make a text logo, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. So flip back over to Dreamweaver, and let's go over to our body here and give ourselves some space. So the first element we need to tackle is the logo, or the header, and I'm just going to make that an H1 tag, which a shortcut to create that is Control 1, Control 2, Control 3, Control 4, Control 5, and Control 6 does the same thing, only with the respected number. So that's a nice handy trick to remember, nice shortcut. So we're just going to make this basically the same as our title. Dynamic Sites LLC. So now we have our logo, and I'll go ahead, and even though it's not in our UX document, I'm going to wrap that in a div called header, which at some point we may convert this completely over to HTML5, where there is an actual header tag, I believe. So we're just going to go ahead and wrap that in a div. So we're going to make a div tag, give it a class, and we'll call it header, and then we'll close it. And again, my Dreamweaver has it set up to automatically close it. Once I close the first tag, it'll automatically give me the closing tag. So I'm just going to highlight that and drag and drop it. Now, one of the major things I've seen with people who've sent me code to look at when I've had time is people have dragged and dropped, or at least it looks that way, and they did not capture everything. So let me undo that. What I've seen a lot of people do is this, thinking they got everything, and they didn't. They missed their opening caret there, and that is something to watch out for. The dragging and dropping within the code is an awesome feature, so use it the right way. And let's go ahead and tab things out, start getting things clean here, and go ahead and save and upload. Let's go ahead and take a preview. Go ahead and refresh the page, and here's a great example of how PHP works with errors. As long as your errors are turned on, which I think by default error handling is turned on by PHP, it's going to tell you when you are missing things. And right now it's telling us that config/setup.php does not exist. Now you might think, well, of course it does, we just made it. That's true. However, what we didn't do, if we go back to Dreamweaver, is we never uploaded it. So right now, let's go ahead and do this just for good measure. Let's right click on the root folder itself and say put. and it's going to ask if you want to put the whole site, and we're going to say yes. Now I don't do that often because once the site gets bigger you don't want to do that, it could take forever. But now we should be able to refresh the page and the errors are gone. So there we go, we have our header. Now we're going to create a couple more divs, which I'm going to use some shortcuts here, and the first thing I'm going to do is copy this, and pay attention to how I did that. I went all the way from here all the way to the edge on both, and then hit Control C for copy, and then I'm going to place my cursor at the edge here and hit Control V to paste, and that will keep the same format. This is important. You can get a really messy document if you don't do that right. So if we look at our UX document, the next step is the main navigation. So we're just going to give this a class of nav_main, which should look familiar from the previous series, and that's how I do it. Let's go ahead and just make this a paragraph tag. So let's change this to P and this to P, and we're just going to put a placeholder here that says main navigation here. And now you're probably getting an idea of what I mean by we're making an HTML version of the wireframes. So as you can guess, we're going to go ahead and take a copy of this one. Copy, Control C, give ourselves some space here, and Control V, and we're going to call this content. And we can pretty much swap out the word navigation here for content. And let's go ahead and just Control V again down here on another line and turn this into footer, and put the footer goes here. So now we have the HTML setup that we need, and we need to upload this. So Control Shift U, and then let's go refresh the page, and there you go. Now this doesn't look very similar to our wireframe, and that's important. We're not done yet. This is just setting up the basics. So the next thing we want to do is we need to define some rules here. And again, this is we're going to be assuming that you've already watched or at least watched our first video or have prior CSS knowledge, because I'm not going to go over the basics in this video or series in general. So let's go ahead and make a class rule for header. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy this here, and enter a couple of times and paste, enter a couple of times and paste, enter a couple of times and paste, and then just go ahead and nav_main, double click on this, call it content, double click on this and call it footer. And there we just saved ourselves a bunch of time. Now I do want to teach you something about CSS that I may not have taught you in the first series, is that you can apply multiple classes to an item or an object on the page. And what we're going to do for right now is we're going to create a class that gives our divs this kind of border and background, and even give it a default of 100% width. And we're going to apply that to each one of these. And the reason this is significant is that it allows us to create one style to handle these default properties: the blue background, the border, and how to handle the size of it. And then we still have the ability to go in and individually modify these elements without having to put in that border information several times. And we can turn this off much easier. We can just delete that rule and or take it off of here. And the way you do this is, first let's go ahead and create the rule, and we'll call this temp block. And this is something, we're calling it that because we're going to get rid of it once we're done with the wireframe kind of idea and we're ready to start putting some style into it. And let's go ahead and we're going to add that to each one of these elements. And all you need to do is click inside here where it says header, hit space, and say temp block. And what that's doing now is assigning 2 rules to our div. There is a hierarchy. It's going to take the header style first, and then anything in temp block will override whatever's in header, just because of the way we put it in there. So that's important to note. Now, just to save time, let's highlight this, but I'm also going to highlight the space before it. And Control C to copy. I'm going to click right here, Control V paste, Control V paste, Control V paste, and save. Now we need to define this temp block here, and let's hit enter, and we're going to first give it a border that goes all the way around it, and to just keep with the style of our wireframes, we'll give it a 2-pixel border, solid, and make it black, which 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So then the next thing I want to do is give it a width, and we're going to say 100%. And before we even look at our document, you're going to notice that they're not going to go all the way to the edge, because by default a document has a margin, or a body has a margin. So since we haven't stripped out the margin on the body, this will end up being more like 90%, so just keep that in mind. Now we just need to do that background color, which we don't need to be accurate on that color, we just need to put a background color in. And since we're using Dreamweaver, we can take advantage of their color picker if we want, and go ahead and hit enter there and kind of find the shade of blue we're looking for. And if we don't see it, we can go over here and kind of refine it. This is good for me. So if you guys want to follow along, keep the same colors, you can do so, and just copy that there. Let's go ahead and save this. We're going to upload. It's important to note that because the cursor is inside the CSS document, when I do Control-Shift-U, that uploads only the CSS document. We also need to click over here and do Control-Shift-U to upload the new index document. Or we could come over here in our Files panel and click Styles, hold down Control, and select Index, and then right-click and say Put. So there's different ways to do that, and you just need to keep that in mind. So now let's see how things are starting to look. So there's our original wireframes. Let's see what our web version looks like. Alright, we're getting somewhere. Now another issue we have is we don't have our sizing right, and really the only thing we need to do is just give some buffer between each one of these. So what we all really need to do is give the content area some height, and we need to add some spacing between each one of these elements overall. So let's go back to Dreamweaver and go into our CSS, and for the spacing we're going to go ahead and apply that to the temp block. and we'll do that with margin because of the box model. We don't want to do padding because that's just going to add more blue, basically. If we do margin, it's going to add space between the objects itself. Check out the link to Mr. Child's cheat sheets, and it's got a great diagram of a box model. So anyways, margin, and we're going to say 10 pixels on top, 0 pixels on the bottom, or on the side, and we're going to keep it like that. And remember, this means this is going to be top and bottom and left and right, since we didn't define the rest. Let's go ahead and save that. Now to make the content have more space, we're just going to give that a height for now. We're going to say height, and we'll just make something up. If you have a smaller screen than mine, your number doesn't need to be as high as mine. I'm going to say 500 pixels and say save. We're going to upload and take a look at what we've done. There you go. We're getting pretty close here. Now, one more thing we can do is, just to keep with consistency of our document here, is we can center these elements here. And a trick we can do, because we don't want to center our, even though this says logo here, we actually have our logo or our company name there, and we want it justified to the left. But for these placeholders, we want them centered. So if we go back to Dreamweaver, we take a look at our document, we notice that there's a difference between the header and the other elements, and that is that we're using an H tag within the header, but all the other ones we're using a paragraph. So what we can do is we can add another rule to temp block, temp underscore block P. This is saying that any paragraph within an object that has the class temp block should do as follows. And we're going to do text, align, center, and save and upload. And go ahead and take a look at our result. Well, there's the original. Let's take a look at our uploaded version, and boom, there you go. The only thing we could really do to make this match is change the font, and let's go ahead and just do that. Dreamweaver, let's go ahead and add a rule for the body tag, and we're going to probably change this at some point. Actually, I changed my mind. Go ahead and keep that there, because we're obviously going to do something within the body tag, but I just caught myself. Since we are going to probably change the font at some point, let's go ahead and just put that defined here in the temp block. So we'll say font family, and we're going to make it something simple like Arial or Helvetica, if you're a Mac person. Now you can also just use font. You don't have to just do font family. That's up to you. That's preference. Go ahead and save, upload. And what this should do is make sure that everything that has a temp block class applied to it becomes Arial. And if we take a look at our document, sure enough. So there we go. We've got our basics set up. The very last thing I want to do, and this video is very much longer than I wanted it to be, so we're going to look at a tool available to set up a color scheme. There's a couple different ways we can access this tool. If you have a newer version of the Creative Suite, many of the programs in there already have it available. and this tool is called Cooler with a K, and we're going to go ahead and use the web version just so I can make sure that everybody can use this in case somebody isn't using Dreamweaver who's following along here. Let's go ahead and just open another tab here, and I can never remember where it's at, so let's go to Google and we'll type in Adobe Cooler, and it's spelled like that, and click on this result. So now we know it's just flat out cooler.adobe.com, and you may have to sign up. I don't think you do to use it. If you want to save things, you should have to sign in. Yeah, it doesn't look like you have to, so you don't even need to sign in or register. Just go ahead and come over here to create, and this will give you the ability to come in here and create a color scheme. And the color schemes have rules to them based on what type you want to choose, like complementary. And this helps with people who have a hard time with color schemes. I'm one of those people. Color schemes sometimes are the least favorite part of a design for me. I can come up with different layouts until my face turns blue. I can have new ones, but when it comes to color schemes, it's tough for me. So this is a great tool to help kind of see what you can create. What I'm going to do though is another thing you can do. So we're going to go back to the home page here, and when you first pop up here, it shows a list of other people's color schemes that people have made. And let's just kind of browse through these, and I'm going to pick one based on, I don't know, whatever catches my eye here. And you guys don't have to pick the one I pick. It's totally up to you. Let's take a look at this one here. If you click on it, you can see the colors. And once you've clicked on it, you come over here to make changes, and this will load it up. Now we're not going to make any changes to this. All we're going to do is take the hex value here and remember it. And this is very handy when you have multiple monitors, which I have, but since this is a tutorial, I can only show you on the one monitor. But what we're going to do, this is a good habit to get into, is go back to Dreamweaver, and in our CSS document, let's make a comment block. So slash asterisk slash, and we're just going to say color scheme, and we're going to go ahead and paste those values in here. So let's go ahead and I'll double click on this and Control C and Control V, and we'll do that again over here. Double click, Control C, hit Enter, Control V, and we'll keep doing this. Control C until we're done and we have all the colors. And it's probably a proper good idea. It doesn't totally matter, but you might as well go ahead and put your pound sign in there just so that it's obvious that these are color codes. And a habit to get into would be to label these. We want to make them easily accessible, and what I mean by that is to be able to just double click on it and grab it, and that way we can replace something. So let's go ahead, and when we label it, we'll hit space, dash, space, and label. That way we still have the ability to double click, copy, and paste right here. So what we're going to do is flip back over to Cooler. So this first code, we'll say this is pale red, and there's probably a more accurate title for that. I'm just doing this to be quick here. We'll call this light tan, and what I'm going to go ahead and do is just go ahead and copy this here, and paste this after each one, save us some time. We'll say light tan. Oops. And then this one we'll call cream. It could be like skin. It's kind of a skin tone. We'll call this one dark tan, which it's actually more of a brownish tan, but dark tan. And then the very last one we'll say dark blue. Let's go ahead and save this. And you can even go as far as, you know, kind of bump this out so it's a little clearer, more clear. And it's good to keep this forever. I mean, you don't even need to delete this when you're done with the site. Keep this here. It's a good reference. Sometimes you can go as far as putting it on every CSS document you have, or if you kind of have a main general document and then a bunch of other ones, kind of child documents, which that'll make sense later, at least have it on that main document so you can always go back and refer to it. It's a nice tool and good way to handle things. So in the next video we'll work on applying this theme or whatever color scheme you came up with or chose. Getting rid of some of the temporary items, the temp block, which I know seems silly because we just made it, but this is just the process and how it goes. And we'll work on some other stuff there, most likely the main navigation. So thanks for watching, and look forward to seeing the next video here soon. And remember, you can always donate by going to thedigitalcraft.com and clicking on the donate button. There's several of them all over the homepage. It's hard to miss. The more donations and the more funding we can get, the quicker I can get these videos out. So thanks a lot, everybody. Bye.